At 11:52 p.m., my boss's calendar told me exactly where he was going. To dot, I stared at the new appointment glowing on my monitor, certain. Exhaustion had finally broken something in my brain. Pier 16 to 8:10 a.m. Cole arrives alone. Beneath it, one sentence waited in the notes. Make sure he doesn't leave. My hand stopped over the mouse. 7 seconds. Later, the appointment vanished. Not moved. Deleted. I checked the audit history. Nothing. I checked recently removed events. Nothing. But I remembered every word. For years of managing Damien Cole's life had trained me to remember details other people forgot. His meetings. His routes. Which captain hated waiting. Which lawyer lied when he touched. His cufflinks. And tomorrow, Damien really was scheduled to inspect Pier 16 at 8:10. Alone. Cancel Pier 16. His voice came from behind me. I turned too fast. Damien stood outside his office in a charcoal shirt, with the sleeves rolled once, his jacket over one arm. At 38, he had perfected the kind of stillness that made other people nervous. Dark hair, cold gray eyes, no wasted movement. What did you say? Cancel tomorrow morning. He watched me. Why? My mouth went dry. Because someone just scheduled your murder. Most men would have laughed. Damien didn't. He placed his jacket over a chair and came to my desk. Show me. It deleted itself. Then repeat it. I did. Every word. His expression never changed. That frightened me more than anger would have. He took out his phone. Marcus. War room. 10 minutes. He disconnected. You believe me? I believe somebody wanted that warning seen by me. By the one person who would remember it after it vanished. His eyes stayed on mine. That's what I intend to find out. 10 minutes later, I stood inside a room I had spent 4 years pretending did not exist. Maps of New York covered one wall. Shipping routes covered another. Damien created 3 fake inspections for the next morning. Pier 16 remained attached to the executive scheduling channel. A warehouse in Brooklyn went through Michael Cross, his attorney. A third location went directly to Marcus Vane. You're still sending people? I asked. Observers. And if whoever sent that message realizes you're testing them? Damien looked at me. Then they make a second mistake. No panic. No threats. No dramatic orders. He wasn't reacting to danger. He was arranging it. At 8:00 for the next morning, security footage appeared across 3 monitors. The Brooklyn warehouse stayed quiet. The third location stayed empty. Then 2 black SUVs stopped near Pier 16. 4 men stepped out and spread across the dock as if they already knew exactly where Damien would stand. My stomach tightened. Russo, Marcus said behind me. Damien said nothing. He opened the calendar access log instead. 4 authorized names appeared. Damien Cole, Claire Bennett, Michael Cross, Marcus Vane. A 5th line flashed for less than a second before the system rejected it. Legacy. Admin token revoked. Damien froze the screen. That token belonged to my father's old executive network, he said. It should have died with the system 18 years ago. The warning had not come from one of our normal accounts. Someone with access to an old Cole credential had forced it onto my screen, then scrubbed it. I read them twice. Damien closed the war room door. The clicks sounded louder than it should have. Then he placed the list between us. One of us, he said quietly, is selling my movements. His eyes lifted to mine, and I finally understood. The real danger. The murder attempt had failed. The betrayal had only begun. By 9 the next morning, I understood something worse than being suspected by Damien Cole. It was being useful enough that he refused to let me leave. Marcus wanted my access suspended immediately. Until we know how Russo got Pier 16, she shouldn't be near another schedule. He didn't look at me when he said it. Damien did. No one word. No explanation. Marcus's jaw tightened. Michael Cross remained silent at the far end of the war room while Damien turned a laptop toward me. 6 weeks, he said. Every Russo move against us. Find what? My people missed. It wasn't trust. Not yet. It was a test with sharper edges. I started with timestamps. Warehouse inspections. Driver. Rotations. Port meetings. Route changes. For 3 hours, the room became numbers, coffee, and the quiet pressure of men accustomed to solving problems with methods I didn't want explained. Then I saw it. Every attack follows a change. Damien came behind my chair. Explain. I pointed to the screen. 6 incidents. Each time Russo moved early. Something in your executive schedule changed first. Marcus folded his arms. Then we have a cyber breach. No, his eyes narrowed. You're certain. Last Thursday's Newark shipment. I opened the record. Russo had men waiting on the revised route at 6:40. I didn't enter that route into the system until 6:52. The room went silent. Damien remembered. Before I finished, I changed it verbally. Yes. Michael leaned forward. Who heard you? I already knew. Damien. Marcus. Me. Marcus gave a humorless smile. Convenient. My pulse jumped, but Damien's expression remained unreadable. Before I could answer, the war room door opened and a security officer entered. The driver from the Newark shipment had survived. His statement confirmed Russo's crew had been positioned before the truck arrived. Somebody had passed the verbal change almost immediately. The officer left. Nobody spoke. Damien crossed to the side table, poured coffee, and placed a cup beside my hand. Black. No sugar. I looked up. You know how I drink it? I know. What happens outside my office? It was such a small answer that it unsettled me more than kindness would have. For 4 years, I had believed I was invisible to him. Apparently, I had only been quiet. I took the cup. Thank you. His gaze stayed on mine for half a second, longer than necessary. For the first time, the silence between us felt less like hierarchy and more like something neither of us was ready to name. Brief relief. Then Marcus destroyed it. Every leak still passes through her. Damien turned slowly. Marcus continued. Pier 16 was on her calendar. Newark passed through her office. She has access to every movement you make. So do you, I said. Marcus finally looked at me. I've spent 22 years earning that access. Then 22 years gives someone plenty of time to learn how to abuse it. Michael inhaled sharply. Damien didn't move. Marcus's face hardened. For one dangerous second, I wondered whether being quiet had been the only reason I had survived this world for 4 years. Damien stepped between the silence and whatever came next. Enough. Marcus looked at him. You're protecting her? I'm protecting the investigation. Damien's voice stayed cold. Suspicion without proof is noise. Then his gray eyes returned to me. Tomorrow, Claire, I find out whether Marcus is right. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. I understood what he meant. Damien wasn't going to ask for my loyalty. He was going to build a trap and make me prove it. At 2:17 the next afternoon, I discovered Damien. Cole had turned my loyalty into bait. He called us into the war room. One at a time. I went last. Damien stood beside the intelligence board with 3 sealed folders on the table. He handed me one. Route C. Hey, shipment leaves Red Hook at 6. And you want me to schedule it? Yes. I studied his face. Nothing. No reassurance. No explanation. This is the test. Do your job, Claire. I hated how calmly he said it. So I did. At 5:43, Russo scouts appeared near Route A. There was no shipment waiting for them. Only Cole surveillance. Michael had received Route B. I had received Route C. Marcus had received Route A. For the first time since Pier 16, I could breathe. Then anger replaced relief. I found Damien alone at the intelligence board. You could have asked me. Asked what? Whether I was betraying you. And if you were. I stared at him. Trust isn't requested, he said. Neither is loyalty. Something shifted behind his eyes. Tiny. But I saw it. You're cleared, he said. That doesn't make what you did acceptable. No, I expected an argument. Instead, he moved aside and entered a security code. The full intelligence board unlocked in front of me. Routes, vendors, financial connections, information I had never been allowed to see. It wasn't an apology. With Damien, apparently, respect came disguised as access. Route is still passed through a secondary vendor, he said. Find out whether Marcus leaked it or someone downstream did. I sat. 20 minutes later, one company name stopped me cold. Bennett Freight Services. Dissolved 18 years ago. That's impossible. Damien came closer. Why? I opened the archived registration. The listed accountant was Robert Bennett. My father. My fingers moved instinctively to the steel watch on my wrist. He had worn it until the year before he died. RB was engraved beneath the face. Damien noticed. Of course he did. Same name, same initials, same profession. My father had been an accountant, but never once had he mentioned freight companies, Red Hook, or men like Damien Cole. Michael entered carrying a folder. He glanced at my screen, then stopped. The color left his face so quickly that even Damien turned. Michael. The attorney said nothing. I stood. You recognize that company. Claire, do you recognize my father's name? His silence answered before he did. A memory came back to me with painful clarity. My father at our kitchen table, repairing this watch. Under a yellow lamp. Never owe powerful men your silence. Claire. I had thought it was advice. Suddenly, it sounded like experience. Michael. Damien's voice dropped. The room seemed to tighten around it. Answer. Her. Michael removed his glasses slowly. My firm represented Victor Cole on the Red Hook audit. Michael said quietly. Robert Bennett was a good man. My chest went cold. That wasn't my question. He looked at Damien, then back at me. Yes, I knew him. How? Michael hesitated. Damien didn't. Whatever you're protecting, stop. Michael exhaled. 18 years ago, Robert Bennett was hired to examine irregularities in several port companies. By whom? I asked. His eyes moved toward Damien. I already knew the answer before he spoke. Victor Cole, Damien's father, the man who had built the empire Damien now ruled. Michael's next words erased whatever relief I had felt from being cleared. Your father worked for the Cole family, Claire. The worst. Secrets are the ones your parents hide because they think silence will keep you safe. I stared at Michael Cross, waiting for him to take back the words that had just rearranged my childhood. He didn't. Your father worked for Victor Cole for 11 months, he said. Forensic accounting. Victor suspected money was disappearing through companies connected to Red Hook. I looked at Damien. Did you know? No, the answer came immediately. No hesitation. No attempt to soften it. Did your father threaten mine? Something cold passed through Damien's eyes. I don't know. He stepped closer to the table. But I won't lie to protect a dead man. I believed him. Not because he was gentle. Damien Cole was rarely gentle. I believed him because he had nothing to gain by admitting uncertainty. Michael opened an archived file. Transfers appeared across the screen. Small amounts moving between companies with different names, then returning through port contractors. Robert found this structure, Michael said. He believed someone inside the organization was siphoning money and hiding ownership around Red Hook. What happened? He resigned. Why? Michael shook his head. He never told me. But my father had told me. I just hadn't understood. Never owe powerful men your silence. Claire. I touched the old watch on my wrist. All those years, I had heard advice. Now I heard fear. Damien moved beside me. Compare these companies with Marcus's secondary vendors. We did. Different names. Different addresses. Same transfer intervals. Same layered ownership. Same accounting pattern. 18 years apart. My skin went cold. Someone rebuilt it. Yes, Damien said. Why use an old system? Because whoever designed it thinks the people who understood it are gone. My father wasn't just connected to Damien's world. He had discovered something someone still needed buried. Michael suddenly looked toward the archived inventory. There may be records. Where? I asked. My firm handled the final paperwork when Robert left. Victor. He listed a storage unit in Queens as the return address for archived audit materials. Damien was already making the call. 90 minutes later, we reached it with Cole security. The lock had been cut. Fresh metal showed beneath the rust. Inside, cardboard boxes had been torn apart. File folders lay empty across the concrete. How long? Damien asked one of his men. Hours. Maybe less. My stomach tightened. Someone had learned we were looking into my father almost immediately. Damien's expression hardened. Our problem isn't only the calendar. Someone was listening deeper inside his organization. I searched the unit anyway. My father never trusted obvious hiding places. When I was 12, he kept emergency cash inside a broken radio because, he said, thieves looked where sensible people looked. Behind a loose wall panel. My fingers touched plastic. I pulled out a cassette recorder. Michael went still. I pressed play. Static hissed. Then my father's voice filled the room. Older than the photograph. Younger than the man I remembered. Burying. If Vane ever returns to Red Hook, the fraud was never buried. My breath stopped. Damien's gaze sharpened. The recording crackled. Again. Don't trust ownership papers carrying Raymond Vane's signature. Then silence. Marcus Vane's father. I looked at Damien. He was already assembling the pieces. Marcus isn't stealing from you. I whispered. No, his voice became frighteningly calm. Then what is he doing? Damien looked at the empty boxes, the recorder in my hand, and 18 years of evidence someone had tried to erase. He's preparing to prove the empire belongs to him. My father had left behind proof of a stolen throne, and Marcus Vane had spent 18 years learning how to claim it. We listened to the rest of Robert Bennett's recording inside the storage unit. His voice faded beneath static, then returned. Raymond Vane had created shell companies around Red Hook and forged ownership. Records that made it appear his family controlled part of the terminal. Victor Cole suspected the fraud and hired Robert to trace it. Robert proved Raymond had forged the ownership chain before Raymond could use it. But exposing his underboss would have divided the organization and invited rival families into the conflict. So Victor buried everything. Raymond lost his influence. The lie survived. Marcus grew up believing his father was robbed, I said. Damien stood beside the broken storage boxes. Or he knows exactly what his father did and decided the lie is more useful. Back at Cole Tower, we traced Marcus's current companies against Raymond's old network. The pattern was undeniable. Marcus wasn't trying to destroy Damien's empire. He was building a story that would let him inherit it. Damien could have confronted him that night. He didn't. If Marcus is working with Russo, removing him now only warns Russo, he said. So what do you do? Damien looked at Red Hook on the intelligence board. Give them something worth reaching for. By Friday, the bait was ready. $40 million in reserve funds would supposedly move through Red Hook Terminal at midnight. The money didn't exist. The schedule did. Only Marcus received the complete version. If Russo mobilized, we would have proof of their alliance. I studied the terminal roster. There are 83 people on the night shift. They stay. I looked up. No, Damien's gray eyes settled on me. Moving them changes the pattern. Then change the reason. Claire, if your strategy requires innocent people standing in the line of fire, it's a bad strategy. Silence tightened between us. Weeks earlier, I would have lowered my eyes. I didn't now. Damien studied the roster. Again, then picked up his phone. Closed the terminal at 10. Electrical. Inspection. Page shift. He ended the call. I stared at him. You. Listen. I corrected the plan. That was almost humility. His mouth moved by half an inch. Don't get used to it. For one brief second, the war disappeared. Then midnight approached. Damien had already moved me to the coal estate in Westchester with my father's recorder. He said the tower was too exposed while the operation ran. I called it control. He called it arithmetic. At 11:26, Russo vehicles appeared near Red Hook. Exactly as predicted. Marcus had taken the bait. At 11:31, another alert reached Damien. A coal safe house in Brooklyn had been hit. At 11:35, a second crew abandoned its position to reinforce it. Marcus wasn't reacting to Damien's trap. He had anticipated it. At 11:38, Damien's Westchester security channel went silent and one Vane-linked vehicle disappeared from the Red Hook perimeter cameras heading north. That was the mistake Marcus had not meant to reveal. I was alone in the estate study when my phone rang at 11:41. Damien locked the study door. His voice was so calm that fear moved through me instantly. Why? Something struck the front entrance downstairs. Once. Hard. I stood. Damien, do it now. I turned the lock. The estate security feed vanished from my laptop. Then every light in the house went black. I could hear footsteps below me. Red Hook, I whispered. It was a distraction. A pause. Damien's answer came quietly through the darkness. No, Claire. Red Hook was never the target. The moment Marcus Vane needed me alive, Damien turned that need into a weapon. I stood behind the locked study door. listening to footsteps move through the darkened estate. Damien was still on the phone. They want Robert's evidence, he said. I only have the recorder. Marcus doesn't know that. A crash sounded downstairs. Are you coming? No. The answer hit harder than I expected. Then I understood. Damien wasn't abandoning me. He was fighting somewhere larger than this house. Listen carefully, Claire. Marcus can't afford to kill you until he knows where the original proof is. Across the city, Damien began closing doors. Every vein-linked account moving through coal-controlled companies was frozen. Loyal captains blocked the routes Marcus needed to withdraw from Westchester. Russo's support network received false intelligence that Robert's evidence had already been copied and placed with 3 attorneys. Within minutes, killing me became useless. Keeping me alive became necessary. The study door opened. 20 minutes later, Marcus entered alone. Later we would learn that a vein-paid maintenance contractor had copied the estate's service access credentials weeks earlier. His suit was damp from the rain, but his voice remained controlled. Where did Robert put the originals? I forced my hands to stay still. You broke into his storage unit. His eyes sharpened. Where are they? I knew nothing. So I gave him the only thing Damien had taught me mattered in a room like this. Uncertainty. The tape wasn't the evidence. Marcus stopped. Just for a second. Enough. He didn't know either. What did he leave you? If you knew my father, you'd know he never trusted one hiding place. Marcus's phone vibrated. Then again, his expression changed as messages appeared. Accounts blocked. Russo support withdrawing. Coal men reclaiming the perimeter. Damien wasn't coming through the front door with a gun. He was making Marcus's entire operation collapse around him. Marcus looked at me differently. He's spending a great deal to keep an assistant breathing. Maybe you underestimated the assistant. A humorless smile touched his mouth. Maybe you overestimate what you are to him. He stepped toward the exit, then paused. Ask Damien why Michael Cross ran your name 2 years ago. My pulse stumbled. What? You think your father surprised him? Before I could answer, Marcus disappeared through a service corridor his men had prepared before the attack. Coal security reclaimed the estate minutes later. Damien arrived only after the perimeter was secured. I met him in the study. Did you know who my father was when you hired me? He didn't flinch. No, Michael investigated me 2 years after you started working for me. He recognized your surname. And you let him? For one day. I stared at him. Then I told him to stop. Why? His voice lowered. Because your father's past wasn't mine to use against you. His hand lifted as if he meant to touch my arm, then stopped before contact. That restraint unsettled me more than the gesture would have. Relief came too quickly, almost painfully. But one question remained. Then why was there still a file? Damien was silent. He crossed to the wall safe and entered a code. From inside, he removed a yellowed envelope sealed decades earlier. Michael wasn't investigating you when he kept this, he said. Robert left it with his firm under instructions. Michael gave it to me after he recognized your name. He paused, then placed a second printout beside the envelope. It showed the revoked Legacy Administrator token from the night of Pier 16. Michael used the old token to put the warning on your calendar. I stared at him. Damien continued before I could speak. 2 nights before Pier 16, Michael found a reference to the inspection inside an archived vein-linked billing file. He suspected Marcus, but had no proof, and he believed confronting me directly would alert whoever was watching my communications. So he forced the warning onto the one screen he knew you would be watching, then scrubbed the token. Anger and relief collided in me. He could have told me. Yes, Damien said. And after this is over, he will answer for using you. Without your consent. My father's handwriting covered the front. For the coal air. Beneath it were 6 words that made my skin go cold. Open. Only if Vane claims Red Hook. I looked at Damien. My father knew this. What happened? His gray eyes settled on the envelope between us. No. He handed it to me. He knew someone would try. My father had left Damien enough proof to destroy Marcus. But the next thing Damien did made me wonder whether winning was the problem. We opened Robert's envelope in the study before dawn. Inside were original port transfer records, a notarized statement, and a ledger key linking Raymond Vane to shell companies created 18 years earlier. The ownership papers Marcus planned to use against Damien were forged. Dates overlapped. Impossible transactions. Two listed witnesses had never worked at Red Hook. My father had documented everything. Marcus has no legitimate claim, I said. Legitimacy isn't what he needs. Damien closed the ledger. He needs enough men to believe the claim until I'm removed. By evening, Damien had arranged a meeting at Russo's Brooklyn Social Club. Anthony Russo sat across from him with representatives from two neutral families. I stayed because I understood Robert's records better than anyone else in the room. Damien laid the evidence on the table. Russo barely looked at it. Marcus lied, he said. That doesn't change what I want. Red Hook. 30%. Russo leaned back. Give me that. And Vane loses my support tonight. Damien's expression never shifted. No, Russo smiled. Then you may have a war. Damien placed another folder on the table. I didn't know what was inside until Russo opened it. His smile disappeared. Private payments. Hidden partnerships. Evidence that could fracture Russo's alliances if the neutral families saw it. Damien didn't threaten him loudly. He didn't need to. Walk away. From Marcus, he said, and that folder stays closed. Russo stared at him for a long moment. Then he stood. Victor would be proud. Damien's eyes turned colder. That wasn't the compliment you thought it was. Russo left. Damien had won without a shot fired. Everyone in the room knew it. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt tired. Back at Cole Tower, I found Damien alone beside the windows. You won. Yes. That's the problem. He turned. Explain. You had the truth. You had proof Marcus lied. And you still reached for fear. Fear ended the conflict. For tonight. His jaw tightened. You think 30 years of blood disappear because you disapprove of how I survived them. No, I stepped closer. I think you decide what the next 30 years are built on. Silence. Since Pier 16, I had watched him listen, adjust, protect. People he once would have treated as numbers. But I finally understood the difference between changing a decision and changing yourself. I returned to my desk and removed my employee badge. Damien watched me. Place it on the table. What are you doing? Resigning. For the first time, I saw something break through his control. Claire, if you're only different when I'm beside you, then you're not different. He could have ordered the doors locked. He could have reminded me how dangerous leaving was. Instead, his fingers closed around my badge. Go home, Claire. It hurt more because he let me. I walked into the elevator without looking back. By midnight, Marcus learned I had left. He mistook my departure for weakness in Damien and moved his coup forward before Robert's evidence could be formally circulated. I didn't know that yet. I also didn't know Damien remained alone in his office after everyone left. Michael Cross would tell me later that Damien called him at 1:13 a.m., prepare an irrevocable succession trust. Michael stared at him. For whom? Damien looked down at the badge I had abandoned. The only person who proved she could walk away from it. 3 days after I walked away from Damien Cole, Marcus Vane tried to take his empire. Before sunrise. I didn't witness the beginning. Michael told me later exactly how it happened. 12 Cole captains were summoned to the 47th floor at 4:30 a.m. Marcus stood at the far end of Damien's table. 2 former Russo representatives Marcus had secretly bought stood behind him. Men Anthony Russo had already disavowed after the Brooklyn meeting. Damien sat alone at the opposite end. Look at what he's become, Marcus said. He closes profitable operations because an assistant questions him. He threatens allies instead of controlling them. He's dismantling the system that made Cole powerful. Damien said nothing. Marcus mistook silence for weakness. My father had a legitimate claim to Red Hook. Cole buried it. I'm correcting that. Theft. Several captains shifted. Marcus placed agreements before them. Protection. Territory. New revenue after Damien's removal. You can follow a man surrendering his empire, Marcus said, or preserve it with me. Damien finally stood. Open the black folders. One waited before every captain. Inside was the story Marcus had spent weeks trying to hide. The deleted calendar warning that exposed the planned Pier 16 Ambush. The controlled route A test. Vein shell companies resurrecting. Raymond's network. My father's original Red Hook records. Communications. Between Marcus and Russo. The legacy token trace showing Michael's. Warning had been triggered by a vein-linked billing record, closing the loop on Pier 16 without confusing the warning with the leak itself. Then, the final document. A redistribution agreement signed 48 hours earlier. One captain went pale. That's my warehouse. Another turned pages. He promised Russo my routes. Marcus's expression changed. Damien had found the piece Marcus never expected him to find. The coup wasn't designed to reward the captains supporting Marcus. It was designed to use them, remove Damien, then sell their territory to Russo. One of Russo's representatives grabbed the agreement. His face hardened. Marcus had promised the same Red Hook percentage to two different sides. He hadn't built an alliance. He had built a room full of future enemies. Damien didn't raise his voice. Marcus didn't come here to restore anything. He came here because my organization was becoming too legitimate for his father's old fraud to survive. Marcus stared at him. She did this to you. Damien's face remained cold. No, you're tearing apart your own empire because of an assistant. Damien pushed Robert Bennett's ledger across the table. She showed me what was already rotten. Then he looked around the room. And I'm making sure men like you never inherit it. By sunrise, Marcus had lost the captains. Russo withdrew its support, and every vein controlled financial channel inside coal companies was locked. The evidence of fraud was transferred to attorneys for legal action. Damien had won, without turning the tower into a battlefield. At 9:07, my phone rang. Michael, come to Coal Tower. I resigned. I know. Then why? He paused. Because Damien won. Relief hit before I could stop it. Is he hurt? No, another pause. Claire, that isn't why I'm calling. An hour later, I sat in the conference room where everything had started. Damien wasn't there. 3 attorneys were. Michael placed a thick legal folder in front of me. Coal's criminal structures would be systematically dismantled under outside legal supervision. Its legitimate companies, real estate, logistics interests, and Red Hook holdings were being transferred into an irrevocable trust governed by an independent board with compliance counsel and audited controls. I turned the page. Controlling trustee, Claire Bennett, subject to independent board oversight. My hand stopped. What is this? What survives legally? Michael said. Damien is leaving under your control. I looked at the signatures. They were real. Why me? Michael slid a sealed letter across the table. My name was written in Damien's hand. That, he said quietly, is the first question he knew you'd ask. Every man in Damien Cole's world wanted his empire, and that was exactly why he chose the woman who had walked away from it. I found him that evening on the 47th floor. No captains, no war room full of voices, just Damien standing beside the windows while Manhattan burned gold beneath the setting sun. I placed the trust documents on his desk. Why me? He turned. Because you saw what everyone else missed. That isn't enough. No, it's the first reason. He stepped toward me. You found the calendar pattern. The verbal leak. Marcus's old financial structure. Your father's connection to Red Hook. I was doing my job. Exactly. His answer stopped me. For 4 years, you had access to my schedule, accounts, meetings, weaknesses. You heard things men would have paid fortunes to know. His gray eyes held mine. You never used any of it. I wouldn't. That's the second reason. I looked down at the documents. And the third. Damien was silent long enough for my heartbeat to become loud. You left. I looked up. Marcus wanted my chair. Russo wanted Red Hook. Captains wanted protection. Everyone who stood near my power eventually wanted a piece of it. His voice lowered. You stood closer than any of them. He glanced at the employee badge, resting on his desk. Mine. And when staying meant becoming someone you couldn't respect, you walked away. Something tightened in my chest. Every man who wanted my chair proved he shouldn't have it, Damien said. You were the only person who never wanted it. I opened the folder again. Then you know I won't accept it like this. I expected conditions. Of course he did. The independent board stays independent. I don't become another throne. That is exactly how it's drafted. Red Hook becomes completely legitimate. In progress. No criminal revenue. Hidden inside coal holdings. Being dismantled. Employee protections. Transparent succession. And a permanent percentage of profits goes to a Robert Bennett Foundation. Damien nodded once. I stared at him. You started all this before Michael knew whether I'd come back. Yes. That answer mattered more than the empire. He hadn't changed to persuade me. He hadn't restructured his world as an apology. He had listened after. There was no guarantee I would ever stand beside him again. For the first time, I understood what surrender looked like on a man who had spent his life controlling everything. It didn't look weak. It looked deliberate. What happens to you? I asked. Damien turned toward the city. For the first time, I find out who I am when fear isn't doing the work for me. I stepped beside him. You could start with dinner. 1. Eyebrow lifted. Is that an order, Miss Bennett? No, I smiled. That's why you'll say yes. 6 months later, Red Hook moved legitimate. Freight in broad daylight. The Robert Bennett Foundation occupied. Offices inside Coal Tower. I managed the legal empire through one independent board, not a throne. Damien remained powerful enough that old enemies still chose their words carefully, but the criminal structure he had inherited was no longer the legacy he intended to leave behind. And I never became a mafia queen. I became something harder to possess, someone free to stay. Damien had spent his life surrounded by people afraid to lose his favor. In the end, he trusted everything worth preserving to the woman willing to lose him rather than lose herself. He ruled an empire through fear. I inherited it because I never wanted his throne.